Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor. I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Today, something came up over the weekend, and it comes up an awful lot, and it troubles me because a lot of this particular um, thing, this issue, comes around from seemingly people not paying attention to primary and secondary education, let alone what they actually see on a day-to-day basis, and that is the topic of sexual dimorphism, usually in regards to in relation to gender and the genders and how they act and things like that. I'm sure I'll get onto in later videos, as those really cause problems for people at the moment in regards to understanding, in regards to pressures from various places that make their lives harder, cause an awful lot of internal conflict and so on. But the basis for all of this is purely the sexual dimorphism within our species. And to define it in more simple terms, sexual dimorphism is the difference in what would be covered as morphology, but which is otherwise kind of structure, color, size, and certain physical attributes and things like that in regards to members of the same species, most prominently between male and female, because they have a very distinct difference between the two. And as a result, it does definitely include things like size and structures in regards to sexual organs and so on and so forth. But this is an interesting area, and we're living in a very interesting time in regards to these discussions, because medical science is advancing into such an extent that at least some of the morphological differences between male and female can be altered with some substantial surgery and things like hormone treatments and whatever else. But it doesn't change the underlying overall biological differences between male and female. And so, firstly, that's just, to me, not a controversial thing to talk about, not even a really groundbreaking thing to talk about. I can look down the street whenever I'm out wandering around town or running errands or whatever, and it's quite obvious that there are some people who are the same seeming species as myself, who are broad, tall, have nothing in the way of cleavage or anything else that would suggest the mammary glands and other structures surrounding it that women have, that are far more developed than men's, and many of the other normal differences in appearance and things like that. That person is very much more like me, and I can go, right, that's a man. Just on evidence, there you go, straightforward. I see someone that's more like my girlfriend, with breasts, wider hips, shorter, in which case then I can go, yeah, okay, then judging from that, female. Fairly easy distinction. It's not hard to spot the differences between. I mean, it's much harder if you were going for cats or dogs or things like that, because you actually need to get in and examine a bit more closely. But in humans, we are very obviously different in a very morphological sense, very, very much in just the way that we appear, our sizes, our structures, and what one side has and the other side doesn't. If you're looking at birds, where, especially for example, I don't know, eagles, they don't have penises. The more you know, but the fact that they don't have penises, sometimes it means that it can be a much more complicated matter in deciding which one is male and which one is female, and so on and so forth, just at a glance. There needs to be an examination, but obviously going up and trying to examine someone on the street, not necessary, because you can tell at a distance what that person is. And so this is where I start to get a little concerned, because that, you would have thought, to the majority of people, and I'm sure it is, blatantly obvious to the majority of people, that men and women are different on a structural, biological, physiological level, And as a result, it's not really hard to tell between the two, and you can't, wholly confuse the two. Yeah? And so, you know, straightforward, right? Why not? Why wouldn't it be? Well, then I watched a thing that's been circulating over the last few days, or over the weekend especially, of it was a kind of discussion thing. It's a kind of panel show almost, kind of like question time over here to a degree, but slimmed down. Called I think it's the Agenda with Steve Paikin or something like that, and you had Jordan B. Peterson, who is a professor of psychology at the University of Toronto, who is arguing against legislation that would enforce political correctness, impede freedom of speech, impede the ability to expose people to certain ideas and things, or to directly interact with people in a polite and civil manner without first essentially providing them a questionnaire to find out who and what they are, which is taking for a casual encounter, casual passing, that is very much pointless. But he's arguing against that, and the people that you had Steve Paikin, the host, who was moderating, and then the other people that you had that he was discussing this with. One of them was I think it was a social justice and trans studies professor. I didn't catch from where. And one of the statements that he came out with was that biological sex doesn't exist, and that neither does gender. And so within his classes, they discuss from an abstracted point of view that, as a result of not acknowledging that sexual dimorphism and biological sex and things like that even exist, you're suggesting that you are quite hugely detaching yourself from reality if you're entering his classroom. And the level of smug and patronizing and things like that was just horrific to see. Firstly, I very much feel for Professor Peterson, who's I can understand why he looked so miserable throughout that encounter. But it's a case of ignoring what you see, ignoring the world around you, and ignoring where we came from are all ridiculous. But to go back to the point that I'm discussing here, sexual dimorphism, that's what brought it up to me this weekend and why I want to talk about it now. And the thing is, I understand in the modern world you are told an awful lot of the time that men and women are equal. And within legislation, within laws, and to an extent, obviously there are some still areas that need improving to one extent or another, but for the most part we're equal. It's in law, there's no two ways about it. Deal with it. But then you've got to take a look at still what we are. The society that we have built, the laws that we have put in place, the ways in which we have managed our huge and booming population on a global scale. We have tried to manage that by implementing certain policies and rules and whatever else as best we can to allow for the even and equal treatment of people, so that equal opportunity is a thing that exists for everybody. But as I have done with other things, let's take this back to a more evolutionary point of view. Let's do some evolutionary biology and psychology stuff here. So in a tribal situation, sexual dimorphism is a huge advantage. Yeah, it allows for the mutations to occur in two different places under two different sets of stimuli, or rather in two different places exposed to different types of stimuli, and as a result then recombining the genetic improvements from two different entities to create a new one with ideally the positives of both. You know, that's a useful thing. That's one of the reasons why most of the successful species on this planet, especially the macroorganisms, ones like us, or large big cats, elephants, even right down to invertebrates and plants, they have biological sex to one degree or another. And as a result, through that, going back to the caveman idea that I've thrown out in other videos as well, if you've got one model of human that is able to go out and hunt effectively, to do all of these things that it needs to do, to travel extensively, acquire resources and bring them back, then that's going to require a completely different set of physical traits, of social traits, of psychological elements and other bits and pieces to make that happen. And those may not be as well suited to rearing children, gathering short-term supplies or short-distance supplies, keeping a home, helping and caring for those that are sick or injured. And as a result, you've got a different set of skills and traits and physicality and all that kind of thing attached to the two different roles involved in hunting and gathering. And as a result, with all of that in mind, you've got very much a case, for just seeing what has transpired, And granted, we no longer live in a hunter-gatherer society, but it took us millions of years to get to the point that we were biologically at the dawn of civilization. It's, we've, depending on who you're talking to, you're looking at only like a few thousand years, a handful of millennia, in which humans in our current form and with our current kind of level of understanding and integration and working together and creating large bodies, larger tribes and so on and so forth, through the written word, through language, and various other things, that has only been a very short period in our overall evolution. And so this sexual dimorphism, the part of the tool set to allow to allow our species to continue to develop through two different routes, combining every at intervals to ensure the best possible outcome overall. It's the mutations and adaptations and so on and so forth of that led to the various races. It led to the various eye colours and hair colours and all those kind of things. All those little things that you can see in people around you were all developed that way. And as a result, taking this back to the argument that was had and the discussions that have been had and so on and so forth, it's not surprising that when you're talking about gender, which, as I said, I'll get into a different thing, which is entirely informed by your biology to one degree or another. Like when you got all of those traits and you've got all of those elements wrapped up, and they are then being expressed as you grow, as you move about the world, it's not surprising that you're going to see the differences between male and female when they are designed for different things, when they are built in different ways, and so on and so forth. So when the gender argument comes up, people who try to remove gender, i.e. the state of being either male or female, and then also attempt to erase biology when that's literally all that there is left, it's a painful breakdown in understanding, in communication, in knowledge, and in just general sense and reason. And as a result, I wanted to just make this video to try and explain that a little more, put it into some context, and I'm gonna go into the meat of the more generally and genuinely discussed areas of this in the future. But the way I see it is that biological sex and sexual dimorphism in our species is very much the beginning of the whole argument and the end of the whole argument. It's not controversial, it's just fact. I have something hanging between my legs that my girlfriend doesn't have, and as a result, that sets us apart, and it provides numerous different other traits just purely due to design, due to the chemicals that are moving around my body relative to the chemicals moving around hers. It makes that big just divide in our species that is so important for continued development. But anyway, yeah, let me know what you guys think. Should this be the end of the discussion? Are you one of these people that would agree with the activists that have been causing these arguments in the first place? Do you agree with the scientific community that would just look at this and throw it out the door because it makes no sense, because you can see very obviously what's in front of you in regards to one person or another more regularly than not? Let me know what you guys think in this on like the basic biology level of this discussion, because I realise that once we start moving into the other areas, everyone's got an opinion, everyone's going to have their say, and there's always going to be an argument around some of that. But yeah, let me know what you think. Otherwise, if you like this video, please drop me a like, and otherwise subscribe for more, because as said, I'm going to be doing a fair number of videos on this end of the topic, because it's one of these areas that I have had an awful lot of young people, university students, college students, who have come to me and had these discussions where they are in a space which is so uncomfortable for them, but due to peer pressure and so on, they've gone with it. But anyway, that's for another video, so I hope you've enjoyed it, and otherwise I will see you in the next video. Take care.